The Blended Chalice series is a broadcast of the Oliver and Grucci Learning Center, dedicated to understanding the theological alchemy and creative syncretism that results when Christianity embraces alternative spiritual traditions, long considered taboo.
St. Andrew's College is an affirming ministry of the United Church of Canada. We acknowledge that we are on Treaty 6 territory and the homeland of the Métis. This verbal acknowledgement is one concrete action that symbolizes our commitment to the work of reconciliation.
So hello friends, and welcome once again to the Blended Chalice. I'm your host, Shawn Sanford Beck, and I'm beaming in from beautiful Treaty 6 territory in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Canada. So in this episode, we are going to be taking a journey into territory which very few people have explored or even know exists, the realm of Christian witchcraft. Yes, you heard it right, Christian witchcraft. And I know that your brains are probably exploding already, but let me assure you that this is a real thing. I've been exploring this topic for years and have a number of friends who identify as Christian witches. And today, I'm so happy to introduce you to an expert and a pioneer in this small but growing field, practitioner and author, Sarah Rutsason. Did I get your name pronounced right, Sarah?
Yeah, Sarah Rutsason. Yeah, it's a little, you gotta hit that Slavic note to it.
I don't quite have the Slovenian accent, but I tried. Sarah is a writer, an educator, a Christian witch, exploring vital truths about spirituality and our world through academic, nonfiction, and fiction writing. She's also one of the 4 matriarchs of the Ministry of Christ under the Order of Divine Mysticism, a woman-led ministry by and for Christian witches and Christo-pagans. Raised Catholic and now a member of the Episcopal Church, Sarah's love for the ritual and traditions of liturgical denominations have shown her just how much Christianity and what we now call witchcraft actually have in common. Her main interest in her research include folk magic, occult theory, mysticism, and also the psychological aspects of witchcraft. So I'm so glad that you've joined us today, Sarah. Welcome to the Blended Chalice. Right on.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here. I'm very excited to talk about this.
Good. So that's your bio introduction, but I'd love to hear a little bit just from you about sort of who you are in your own sense and where you come from. Like, where are your roots, maybe both geographically and spiritually or theologically? Like, where are you from?
Yeah, so I'm coming at everyone from Rhode Island, a little bit cloudy today, a little bit, actually it feels very warm. It's 40 degrees and that is a very cozy temperature after like negative 13 for a while. But growing up here in Rhode Island, my dad is an American, my mom is from Slovenia, and so I've been to both countries. I speak Slovenian, I'm really interested in my cultural background and my heritage, and the biggest thing I know growing up in Christianity, specifically Catholic Christianity, is that I had a very relaxed experience. Like, my parents were very much both people who wanted me to make my own decisions, my own opinions, and all my mom really cared about was that, like, no matter what's going on, that I just believe in God. She's like, if you believe in God, I don't really care what else you're doing, I've done my job. Right. And so I never really had these weird, like, kind of hang-ups or issues or anxieties around that. I just kind of did my thing. And then actually, funny story, my mom wanted me to go to confirmation. I did not. I said, what's the point of that? I don't understand why I should do that. Then I did want to go, and she did not let me because she knew that I was going to just go there to fight with the priest about the LGBTQ in the church and everything else. So she's like, no, actually, no, you're not going to just go there to get kicked out. So I'm like, okay, fair. But yeah, so I grew up in this world where Christianity was not this kind of, from my conversations with other folks, this foreboding, watching, kind of like monitoring thing. When I go to Slovenia and I walk around, there are shrines, little just like miniature houses with like Mary or a saint or Jesus in them, like on the street corners. They're just there. They're on the hiking trails. They're just there. And it's not to say I'm watching you, it's to say I'm protecting you from
Mm,
whatever's on this path. I'm
right.
protecting you from car accidents because people drive like crazy over there.
Mhm.
I'm protecting you from all of these things. I'm here with you. We are family, was this kind of sense. It was family. It was magical, it was comforting, it was like you're never alone and not in a surveillance way, in
Mhm.
a kind of what's the word? Solidarity way.
Yeah, yeah. Cool.
So that's my background with that. And like I don't know, again, in Rhode Island, like we're all Catholic, but we're also all like a mess up here.
Right.
We're all very like rough around the edges and just like, you know, it's not church without the wine kind of thing.
Right. Right.
So
Right.
that's me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, so it sounds like you sort of dodged the bullet on some of the religious trauma. I'm sure. I mean, we all get some of it, right? But some of the religious trauma that can come from a religious upbringing, especially when you're looking at mysticism, magic, other pieces like that. There can be some traumatic stuff. But it sounds like you were actually able to get through at least somewhat unscathed.
Mostly, I mean, more or less. I feel like the Catholic guilt is still very like it's just like genetic at this point, so I feel like some of that still ended up in there, but
Mhm.
like for the most part, I never had a problem with like any part of my identity. And I actually from a young age, I mean, I'm just an argumentative person. So from a young age, I just remember like looking at God and being like, "Why is this a problem? What is
Mm,
your issue with this?" Like I did not have any qualms with looking at God directly and asking questions like that. Like, what's the big deal? Because I
mhm,
was like, if God is so powerful and so all-knowing, he'll have an answer and he'll be
mm,
able to get it to me. I'm not going to sit here and like, oh, look at the ground and say, oh, I shouldn't even ask. No. If I have a question, who else can answer it but God?
right,
You know?
right, right. And did you hear answers in your when you were asking?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I sure did. And it's really funny actually with witchcraft especially. I remember getting into this because always been fantasy minded. My mom loves fairies, she loves Lord of the Rings, she loves all these kinds of creatures. We always believed in ghosts, like all these kinds of things. And so for me, it was just like, why? Like, first of all, you can't tell an 11-year-old that magic is real in any sense and not expect them to get extremely excited. So when I heard anything about Wicca or anything with my like mostly unmonitored internet access, I
Hmm.
was like, this is awesome. I'm writing down spells to turn back time or,
Right.
make the clouds shake because I'm 11 and it's fun. But eventually I start understanding it more as like the religious aspect of Wicca. And so I'm like, God, what is the problem
Hmm.
with this? And one experience that I had was so crazy because I was at a festival with my parents and I don't know how, where, or why, but there was this little like tent full of books, like way off in the distance. And I saw a book that I could see had Jesus on it.
Mm.
Like even from super far away, it had Jesus on it. So I run over to this bookstore because it's kind of like a witchy bookshop
Right.
tent thing. And there's Jesus in it. And it's a book called Magic and Christianity from Jesus to the Gnostics.
Mm. Hmm.
And that was my first scholastic book that had like tangible archaeological evidence. Like, look, this has always been a thing. And
Right.
so that to me was the most like in my face answered prayer I ever had, where God was
Yeah.
just like, well, here's an entire book about why I don't have a problem with it. And I was like, well, all right.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. That's so cool. Okay. So after a whole young, like a childhood, a young adulthood, you're now into maturity. How now, if somebody asked you to describe your own self-identification as a Christian, what are some of the things that you would want to include in that? Like how would you describe your identity as a Christian?
uh so this is super complicated because like I call myself a Christian witch because it kind of stirs the pot. Like this
Mm,
is a title to me that is inherently political and adversarial.
right.
I could call myself any number of cutesy little things that would soften that blow and that would like kind of conceal what I'm doing or make it more palatable, and I'm just not interested. I'm just kind of like, here's what I'm doing,
Mhm.
and all of the things and implications wrapped up in that. And this is important to me because as a Christian witch, the witch as an archetype, as a symbolic and narrative figure is that of the outcast and
Right.
the one with all the knowledge that people want and yet villainize her for having, the
Hmm.
one who is scapegoated and blamed for all of these things that go wrong in the community. So it's kind of like, to me, that lines up with who Jesus was spending his time with. He was
Right.
spending his time with those who were outcasted and scapegoated and avoided and who had interesting things to say but were not listened to because they didn't fit this perfect picture, this ethos of what one should look like to say these things.
Right.
Uh, and so that's why I have that specific title. But in terms of the practice itself, I like to call I like to call witchcraft just like mysticism with arts and crafts. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's mysticism with some macaroni art. Like that's really, a more empirical, I guess, and like experimental way of going about it rather than just kind of like sitting there and like passively having experiences.
Right. Right. Yeah. So is within all that is sort of the person of Jesus still you mentioned him as one sort of like or who would have hung out with witches or people like witches in his day. Is he still a figure that appeals to you, that you sort of feel a relationship with or a loyalty to? And what about the rest of the, let's call it the Christian pantheon, right? Like the Trinity, Mary, the saints, like are all of those sort of part of your world?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel like people get confused a lot because, like, when I'm talking about this stuff, I'm always saying God, 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 and people are like, "But you never mentioned Jesus." And it's like, well, when I say God, I mean the triune God. Like, I
Right,
mean
right.
Father, Son, and Spirit. So the Son is Jesus. He's a part of that always.
Mhm.
And so, like, my experience with this Godhead is very direct. It's very unfiltered. And it's really times when I feel like that Godhead needs a human touch that Jesus specifically will manifest. That
Right.
Jesus specifically will, like, I will feel that energy, that vibe, like a mentor or like an older
Mhm.
brother or like this very kind of like gentle guiding hand versus
Mhm.
God the Father, who's very just like, you're gonna learn today, whether you like it or not. And it's like, okay.
Mhm.
And then the Spirit is like, really don't talk to the spirit unless you want your entire brain like rearranged because
Mhm.
she refuses to filter it. But she
Right.
is to me the she. She's like God the mother, really more than anything else.
Right.
And so, growing up Catholic again, we all love Mary. All of us love Mary. And I've got all these angels, there's the saints, there's like ancestors, because in my understanding, no one is dead anymore. That's kind of the point
Mhm.
of
Mhm.
Jesus' death and resurrection. My ancestors are alive and fully
Right.
capable of interacting. Um, and then also like there are others in the pantheon. I see a lot of people talk about Mary Magdalene or even the goddess Asherah, who was
Mhm.
like once the consort of Yahweh and all these things. And it's just like, to me, I've gotten to a point in my understanding of religion where I feel like all of these different names are just kind of reflections or facets of the one God.
Right.
And so
Right.
it kind of starts feeling redundant to me, I guess, to start,
Mm.
splitting hairs and, well, I'm not talking to God the Father, I'm talking to God the Son. It's like it's all just God. It's
Mm.
it's it's just all wrapped up in there. And if they need to tell me something specific in a specific mask, then they'll do that. But otherwise, like I just kind of skip the middleman, I guess.
Mm. Mhm. Yeah. Interesting. Interesting. So as you keep, because I know you read lots of theology, and I know you really pour through this stuff and think a lot about it. Are there any sort of theological sources or authors or teachers that really have spoken to you over the past while that have sort of shaped who you are as a theologian? Because I mean, it sounds like you are a theologian in your own right.
I mean, well, I mean, you flatter me with that one. I would always like to think that I know what I'm doing, but at the same time, I'm always like, oh, but I'm not really, I've only read, but I'm not really, But
I've
nonetheless,
seen your stack of books that you've read, though. So.
yeah, I feel like this is another thing that makes me like a witch or a wizard is my house just has stacks of books like
Mhm.
everywhere that have made it off my shelf and not gotten put back.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but for me, I would really say like the biggest ones right now off the top of my head are definitely Moltmann with the Crucified God.
Yeah.
That is like a linchpin in my understanding of the cross and like why it's so important. And there's also Thomas J. Ord. He
Yeah.
has a book called The Death of Omnipotence and the Birth of Amipotence. And
Yeah.
this really is like the cornerstone of my understanding of mysticism
Mhm.
and magic. And it's that we are co-creating with God. That like God isn't just up there like doing everything. Like
Right.
we have an active hand in it and he requires our participation to
Yeah.
make these things happen. He can't
Hmm.
just bypass us. He has to work with us. And so he's always kind of like doing the birds of paradise dance at us, trying to like get us to come and do stuff with him. He's trying to lure us to him rather than just, threaten and shake his finger at us. So those two really like
Yeah.
they make me understand this whole thing with God is like I have an active responsibility to participate in what God's trying to do. And for me, that is
Hmm.
through magic and through all the other stuff. Like, makes me think of when Pope Francis says, like, you pray for the hungry and then you feed them. That's how prayer works. That's also how magic works.
Yeah.
You do
Yeah.
your spell and
Exactly.
then you go make those effects happen. You
Yeah.
you act with the energy, not just expect it to do it all.
Exactly, exactly. And of course, with looking at Ord, also Moltmann too. I mean, Moltmann, you really get into this notion of the God who suffers, right? And it's not a far step from that. I mean, I think Moltmann really paved the way to somebody like Tom Ord drawing on the whole process relational tradition to say like omnipotence is like a really bad theological idea that's caused a lot of damage. And what would it mean to talk about the power of God being love, right? That whatever power God has is the power of love, and then what gets drawn forth from that. I'm looking forward to Ord's new book coming out very soon. I think it's going to be his first volume of a systematics of divine love is coming out like next month or something like that.
All right, well, so that's another thing I gotta go get my hands on.
Exactly, exactly, exactly. Okay. So you've got your wrestling with theological traditions. You're embedded in the church. You've gotten confirmed now or entered into the Episcopalian church. You've got a church community. You're thinking you pray to God. So there's definitely there's a Christianity as part of who you are. Tell me about the witch. What does it mean for you to identify as a witch? And I'm going to give you a little bit of probably background, probably for some of our viewers and listeners may only hear witch and either understand it to be Wiccan because they may have had some exposure to Wicca, or the wicked witch stereotype from, or maybe some. I mean, we've got a lot of feminist folks within our college community, so might understand witch as that deliberately chosen political up the patriarchy type thing. But I know within the field of witchcraft, there's a wide variety, everything from sort of cunning folk to Wiccans to trad witches to hedge witches. Where are you in that spectrum, or are you all across the board?
Yeah, so I mean the fun thing with witchcraft, I mean, this is where calling myself a Christian witch does get exhausting because every day someone's like they're coming up like holding up the Bible to me as if I have not read this item
Right.
and they're saying, but this, but that, and I'm like, yeah, I've already broken this down like at length in my own academic works. Like I know what it says. I know what it actually means. And the thing that people don't get is that like and it's totally fine not to get this, it's totally reasonable, but that the word witch had such a radical shift in connotation in the last century.
Yeah.
Up until about the 19, like maybe I want to say like late 1800s, early 1900s, it was that idea of someone going out of their way to screw up their community, to steal from their neighbors, to poison wells, to, ruin crops, to do all these terrible things with these evil forces. Sure, like that was what people thought witches were for pretty much like 4,000 years. So I understand it's going to be like an uphill battle to recorrect 4,000 years of like our brain and our connotation with this word in one lifetime. So I understand. But at the same time, the thing
You got
is
to
that,
start somewhere.
yeah. And it's like now, especially because of Wicca, and I think we got to appreciate Wicca for doing this legwork. It's that, no, it's really more like it's more like exactly what the Catholic Church and other high church liturgical denominations already do, which is gathering together,
Mhm.
doing the ritual, doing, the process, the step by step, organizing one's sense of being into this space and calling on the divine to create something with us. Like,
Mhm.
and when we define witchcraft like that per Wicca and thereafter, you realize that pretty much anything, any religion can be considered witchcraft, which is why I feel like people who don't like witchcraft are also the people who don't like Catholics.
Mm.
A lot of
Yeah,
those,
yeah,
a
yeah,
lot
yeah.
of folks like they're just very much like, well, Catholicism is witchcraft too, and it's like the Catholics would say no, but honestly, yeah. So it's
Mhm.
like for me, my witchcraft looks like a one-man church service. Like when I do a money spell at the start of the month, it looks like literally I have my green candle and my money bowl, and I've got some herbs and spices that to me represent or are associated with wealth and abundance and inspiration and all these things. And then I've got a prayer book. I've got like my New Testament. I've got the Book of Common Prayer, all in here to make this three-part reading,
Mhm.
and then to basically thank God for what He's already given me, ask Him to bring me, more of the same. And I read, this is where it's really funny. People always say, well, you can't serve two masters. And I'm like, that's very funny because I use Matthew 6:24 to 34 every month in my money spells. I
Mhm.
read
Mhm.
that line every
Right,
month, and it's
right.
about money. I'm
Mhm.
using that to say, like, I trust God, like God knows what I need. I don't need to worry about food. The body is more than clothing. I don't need to worry about it. God understands what I need. And that is part of that ritual of like kind of letting go of the fear of that monthly financial stability.
Right.
So that's a long form ritual. I also like with all these different types of witches, I call myself a kitchen witch
Mhm.
because I just don't see the point in having all of these fancy tools and fancy herbs that are poisonous or you can't eat. My whole pantry's full of herbs.
Mhm.
So if I'm gonna make spaghetti, I can just ask all of these herbs and fruits and spices to basically just lend up their energy, to lend up their prayers. I treat them like saints. I say, okay, brother tomato, brother oregano,
Mhm.
pray with me for this thing. We'll offer it all up to God and I'll ask God to then bless this
Mhm.
pot.
Right.
So
Yeah.
when you put it that way, it's kind of like this really like, is it witchcraft? Is it Christianity? And that's really the whole point. Is it? It's kind of both. It's always been
Yeah.
both.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it sounds like when you, especially when you describe those different rituals, and the use of herbs and food, and there's definitely an animistic underpinning to all of that. There's a sense that these are beings, these are persons who we
Mm.
cooperate with, just like we would cooperate with our human persons, right? With our human friends. These are persons who are in our lives, whom the spirit has given us. I hear a person, I hear a bird person, an avian person in your
Yeah.
background. That's cool. But who want to cooperate with us in ushering the divine presence into our world through what we do.
Yeah, and like I mean directly I think about two mystic slash saints, and that is Saint Francis
Sure.
with his Sermon of the Birds to telling talking to them, and then also Meister Eckhart who
Yeah.
says God is isness and every creature is a word of God.
Yeah.
Like everything around us to me is a brother and sister in creation, and they
Mhm.
have their own agency and their own talents and their own skills or purposes.
Yeah.
Oh, I also think of Saint Hildegard, who was like, hey, onyx, I mean, granted, like these aren't good recommendations to put crystals in your wine and then drink the wine. Like there are a lot of crystals that are poisonous in
Mhm.
liquids, so like let's not do that. But but still, that idea that they
Yeah.
they're full of God's light and they can do these things and they terrify the devil, and it's like
Yeah.
so it's very frustrating to me when people act like this is somehow incompatible with Christianity, where I can point to 13 billion things from 1,000 years ago that are like, well, we've been doing this, so what are you
Yeah.
talking about?
Yeah, and it in many ways it's an unbroken stream. I mean, it all the way from well, several thousands years ago with the Egyptian magical papyri that also had bits and pieces from Greco-Roman and Christian, and all the way through sort of the early Gnostics. But then in the medieval times and Renaissance, you get these streams of what eventually become called folk magic or folk practice, right? And Paracelsus, and you've got all of your, like, all of the sort of the occult figures, the hidden figures that culminate in cunning craft, and all of these traditions that are still alive and well when people just pull back the page on our cultures a little bit and take a look at what's going on between the lines. It's the magical streams have never stopped. They just keep flowing. So.
Yeah, and I mean, especially also because like when we talk about occultism, like I have works by Agrippa, and I think
Yeah.
it's really funny because people will say, well, Agrippa recanted all of that. He said magic is actually not, and then I read his works and I'm like, no, Agrippa realized what I have realized in doing this a long time, which is that all the tools and all the stuff, it's set dressing. It is a way in which we kind of hype ourselves up
Hmm.
to believe in the work that we're doing with God.
Hmm.
And like so when I read Agrippa and when I read him be like, "Oh no, all of this is actually kind of dumb and useless." What he means is like you don't need this to achieve the same effects. You don't need to have all of these items and tools and this and that and up and down. You just need to have that enlightenment. And the thing is, that enlightenment is hard to get to if you don't go through these motions. It's kind of
Hmm.
like when you have like an algebra equation and then your teacher says, "Okay, we'll do this proof and like reduce this equation to get that equation." You have to do the work and you have to la 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 and eventually you get here. Now you understand why it is the way it is
Yeah.
and they'll just copy it. And I feel like that's like occultism itself. It was a science of learned men. It wasn't
Hmm.
magic. It was something to be studied and broken down and understood. And it's the same kind of idea. You don't just do the platitudes, say the stuff that you hear in church, and then go on your merry way. You take the time to process it, work with it, break it down, understand why you're saying it. And then you can kind of put all that set dressing away and just kind of snap do the magic on the go.
Yeah. Or if you've got time and the inclination, keep doing some people call it
Oh
prayer with
yeah.
props, right? Keep doing the sacred drama, keep doing the ritual, understanding that underneath it all is essentially that deep relationship with the divine. That's what you're trying to tap into. So,
Right. And so
yeah.
I feel like
Yeah.
I feel like I should clarify in that like people hear me say what I just said and they'll be like, "But I like to use the props." It's like,
Hmm.
yeah, go ahead and use them. There's nothing wrong with using them. Like
Hmm.
it doesn't matter if I understand the why, I'm still going to go to church and participate in the sit, stand, kneel and the readings and the whole thing because it's not just like a I need to prove to myself. It's also a moment where I'm not on my phone. It's a moment where I am fully present, I am fully engaged. And so that, like, it has so much value as something that really just lets you sit in the presence of the divine
Hmm.
without all of these other, whirling thoughts and other things going on. So
Right.
it's a very helpful thing. And I do encourage people to still like take that hour to do that ritual, to do that ceremony.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in some ways, it's sort of like the I find in magical spaces there's a replica of the Catholic Protestant debate sometimes. Like it's my Protestant urge is just like clear it all out. Let's just do the thing, and my Catholic urge is like no, let's light all the candles, let's have all the colors, let's use all the incense. Like because the deep mind really that appeals to us too, and that helps us to focus. So you over the past few years, I don't know how long you've been sort of a public figure as a Christian witch, but I'm thinking it's probably 5 or so years, 5 to 10 years.
Like, I mean, it depends on how far we go back and what we define as public figure. I
Yeah.
ran a Tumblr blog when I was a teen that got like a lot of attention, and like it's really funny now doing this as an adult. Someone came back and was like, "I remember you had this blog. It's crazy to
Mhm.
see you doing more of this now, and like actually, writing the books about it and stuff." And I'm
Yeah.
just like, "That's crazy that you remember that blog." But yeah, so
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
on what I'm doing now, I would say probably since like late 2021, I have been like on the internet and it really started picking up around 2022.
Mhm.
And the only problem is like where I am now is not where I started. So when I started my public figureness, it was very much like I don't know, basic kind of stuff,
Hmm.
and I hadn't done a lot of this reading, and I also had not taken as many public stumbles as I had with my own, religious journey as well, which
Right.
has been really fun. So I've kind of been like growing in front of people in real time. I treat it more
Yeah.
like we're all learning together. I'm not
Yeah.
an expert. I'm here to screw up with you all, and we're all
Right.
going to talk about it.
Yeah, 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 yeah. That's cool. And just recently, like as you've been bringing these realities together in a public way, you've just connected and launched a new thing with three other women, this Order of Divine Mysticism. And I've checked out some of the work online, and it looks like there's a lot of people interested already, like who are following you and sort of and commenting on the videos and the sermons that you're posting up. What's it like to take this, um, that's somewhat unique, somewhat challenging, life-giving spirituality, and work with other people, who are on that path, but also doing it differently? Like, how's that been for you?
It's been honestly really fulfilling. I didn't expect, like, we just launched this like January 1st, like
Hmm.
day one of 2026, and already it's like we have like our church space is a Discord server,
Hmm.
and that server's already got like well over 700 people,
Hmm.
which is crazy. There's
Yeah,
all these people, and like for the first time, a lot of them are feeling like, oh, cool, I have a place to go.
yeah.
I have a place to ask my questions and not feel judged about these questions. We have like actual ordained, priests on our team as chaplains. We have scholars. Like one individual is really cool. She's doing a PhD on Asherah and all
Hmm.
these kinds of things. So like we have all of these interesting people. And then we also have a lot of young people who are like, like this is a per Discord's rules 13 plus. So like we keep it PG in here and we do all that kind, but we also want to give it a space where, kids, younger folk also have some adult mentorship
Hmm.
and who are, in a safe place. They
Yeah.
don't have to like run around and try to find information from the crazy place that like TikTok can be.
Hmm.
I've seen many bad things happen on TikTok, and I'm just trying to make this a space where like parents can bring their kids if they want, where like people are safe, where people are, they have community, they have fellowship, they have theological like guidance, and
Hmm.
we're trying to also, this is why we have four, like me and my three other friends, we have four of us because all of us have a different idea about
Yeah.
who God is and like who Jesus is. And so we're trying to represent this big, I guess, spectrum of ways in which you can connect with the divine.
Hmm.
And that I think helps. All of us have a different sermon style, all of us have a different outlook, all of us have a different tradition. And it makes it so if some folks like my liturgical sermons more, they hang out more with my sermons. If
Right.
someone likes my friend Hannah's more, I guess, meditative sermons, they do that, and those kinds of things. And then we all just kind of chat and talk and hang out, and it's very nice.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's given people that place where like they're like, I'm not comfortable in a regular church. I'm
Hmm.
not comfortable with the dogma. I'm not comfortable with like the people. So this is a way to kind of give them that without having them like potentially exposed to unkind folk.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
it's an affirming place. It's pro LGBTQ, all that kind of stuff. So it's like this is a place where you're not gonna have to have those kinds of conversations, but we still do encourage them to like, go to an in-person place. Find some churches maybe nearby that are not so scary. Scope them out. Look at
Yeah.
their live streams online. Like we'll see what they're about first, and maybe try to connect in person with your local community.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. But it is so great to have a space, and there are getting to be more. Like I've watched this space grow over the years. There are getting to be more spaces where people who are walking dual paths, who don't want to give up one or the other just because people say they should, walking those dual paths are actually finding a place, right? And that is so important. And I'm just really, I was very excited as I was watching sort of what's unfolding for you in that. So, what is this as you do this work um, as a form of ministry? Really, what does Christian witchcraft actually offer to the wider church and to the world? Like, why might it be important, especially for the church, to take note of what Christian witchcraft is?
Yeah, I mean, actually, it is funny. One of my Episcopal priest friends, he was saying that like one of their bishops was saying like, oh, we could learn a lot from the witches, and like I do think so, and I think it's because witches don't have a qualm with going directly to the divine.
Right.
Like, this is gonna sound potentially feather ruffling. I'm sorry in advance, but I do feel like the way a lot of people talk about Christianity and about God, it sounds like they're just treating God as like a philosophical icon
Mm,
or like an idea or a paradigm. Like they talk about God as if, oh, he's always there and he's always present, but you can only interact with him through this book. You can only
mm,
interact with him through a prayer that is pre-written for you. If you say that you hear something from God, you're crazy. And
mm,
so to me, that's just like, oh, so we're all just a bunch of superstitious atheists in here.
mm,
That's what this is. We have intellectualized the faith to the point of not being faith anymore, or
mm.
not recognizing God as an agent of his own being,
Right.
someone with the ability to talk to us. It's like,
Mm,
how'd the Bible get written if he couldn't do that?
mm.
So for
Yeah,
for
yeah, yeah.
witches, we're just like, I'm gonna pull out the tarot cards. I'm asking myself.
Hmm.
Everyone's like, well, I wonder what God would think about. Let's ask him.
Hmm.
Let's just
Hmm.
pull it out and let's just go. And so that just seems like people kind of. I think the problem is they kind of, I don't know, imposter syndrome themselves and they're thinking they're not worthy of hearing from God.
Mm.
They're not worthy of approaching him and getting an answer. You get that very accusative tone with people sometimes where they say, "Well, who are you that God talks to you?" And it's like, "I'm nobody special." That's the point, is that
Right,
anyone can talk to God. You just
right,
have to actually get out of your own way enough to ask and then listen.
right, right, right. And that does seem like a real gift that witches and pagans and magic users in general and feminist spirituality folks bring into Christian spaces is the expectation of real experience, right? Like there's a real a valuing of people's direct experiences of the divine rather than sort of an abstracting or a second hand type thing. And whether that's through like the rituals and candles, whether that's through tarot, whether that's through, mapping out the stars with astrology, like there is this expectation that when you do the work, you will hear from God in one way or another. And so that's totally a gift that I think folks who are in what I would call enchanted spaces bring into the church, and I think we need more of that. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. This is like a big part of what it is because I noticed like the biggest thing with people with that religious trauma that a lot of them carry from their old religion is this idea of unworthiness of like, I'm
Mhm.
just I'm just a sinner and God doesn't even really care, and it's just like how how did we lose the gospel where the entire
Yeah.
point was that like, yeah, we're all going to sin and we're all going to screw it up, but like the point is that God loves us so much that he gave us every possible out from that
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
and he's trying constantly to come get us.
Exactly. Yep. Unrelenting love.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We need some more of that stuff. That's for sure. Sarah, we're almost at the end of our time. Was there anything else that you want to put out there? I know you put out lots of public statements in different places, good teachings and that. Anything you want to share with our folks before we sign off?
I guess I would just say that like, I don't know, if the phrase Christian witch hits your ear wrong, or if anything like this hits your ear wrong, instead of like putting a wall up, as I've
Mhm.
seen many people do the second they do this, I would say like pause
Mhm.
and then let yourself be a little curious about it, because 99% of the time when I have talked to like every time I get a new priest at my church, which has been for some reason kind of often in the past few years, they just kind of
Mm.
kept cycling. I would make it a point to go talk to them in person and be like, okay, so I'm a witch. And then they just kind of like look at me with their giant eyes and I'm
Right.
like, this is
Right.
what it means. And I show them the book that so like my confirmation was very funny because the priest is like, wait, you didn't read this, you wrote this. And I'm like, yes. And so he's like, okay, so I don't think you need to like go through like the typical confirmation like teenagers are learning. I think you could just
Right.
do. I'm like, great. But as soon as I start explaining it to them,
Yeah.
they're like, "Oh, I see what you're talking about." And it's like, there you go. That's
Hmm.
it. If you let yourself stay a little curious
Yeah.
and just ask questions and like not even participate, just like let them show you what they're doing. You don't have to be a Christian witch to be a Christian. You don't have to be a Christian witch to be a witch. You can still do just as you're doing. If it works for you, that's fine. But try not to immediately go on that like defensive of
Mhm.
like, this is wrong. Because it's like, well, hold on, who told you that? And are there any implications and assumptions maybe wrapped up into your idea of witch that might make you talk past each other than to each other?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. That's a great invitation. Stay curious. You know, we're learning that, right? Slowly we're learning that. Like, don't go with those first gut responses of, oh, that can't be a thing. Just stay open. And so I'm gonna put some of your information, some of the links to your material in the show notes. So if some of our viewers are like, I am curious, I want to know more, they'll head your way. And I know you provide on your website and stuff other resources too, like other places that people can go to sort of think through some of these things and fulfill some of that curiosity about it. But I want to say thank you so much for having this conversation, for taking the time, and for just, you know, helping to open folks' minds and hearts a little bit to this reality of Christian witchcraft and the gifts that it might bring. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, thank you so much. This has been a great conversation. So I hope it helps somebody and that they get some new ideas from it.
I'm sure it will. Good, good. So friends all, thank you for joining us here in the Blended Chalice. It's been an amazing conversation for me, and I trust that it stirred new things in your spirit, piqued your curiosity. So everybody keep exploring. Push through resistance to new ideas, and until next time, may God bless us and keep us. May her face shine on us and be gracious unto us. May they look upon us with favor and grant us peace now and always. Amen.
This has been a broadcast of the Oliver and Grucci Learning Center at St. Andrews College, Saskatoon. If you wish to learn more about our programs, go to standrews.ca and click on the Lifelong Learning Pathway under the Programs tab.